let's talk about cramping. Cramping is one of those things that seems to occur earlier on in the year or earlier on in a season, and there's a couple of reasons why. We have two theories right now with which we think, not exclusively, but together can cause cramping. One might be the predominant reason for a specific athlete, one might be the predominant reason for another athlete, both might be feeding in to a specific athlete. But we have the neuromuscular fatigue theory, and we have the electrolyte and fluid imbalance theory. The neuromuscular fatigue theory states that a repeated bout of physical exertion that someone is not accustomed to will overuse and disrupt their normal spinal reflexes that control their muscle. So you have these little guys called Golgi tendons and these little apparatuses called muscle spindles that work to regulate muscle tension. They help tell your brain what's going on with your muscle and help your brain determine how hard to contract, when to contract, etc. And through the repeated bout of utilizing them when they're not accustomed to a lot of work, they start to get faulty and they don't register what's going on very well. And so then the body starts to acquire a heightened level of control over its muscle contractions as a protective mechanism, let's say. So in applicableness, we can take a athlete who didn't do anything over the summer, just like hung out at the beach, missed their PR week, etc., and then they come out for football in the fall, they do a couple of practices, and then boom, they're in a game. And now they're sprinting at 100% effort, trying to catch someone or run away from someone, and a quarter or 2 quarters or even 3 quarters in, they have massive cramps hit them. Well, their nervous system wasn't ready for all those repeated bouts of high intensity sprinting because they didn't build up their capacity over the summer. So that's our neuromuscular fatigue theory. That athlete is usually that like super athletic athlete who just kind of skips out on all off-season stuff, but then like always seems to cramp in the game. And it's like, well, it probably has to do with the fact that you just don't stress your body enough, frequent enough, so it's not accustomed to it. Then you've got your electrolyte and fluid imbalance theory. That has to do with the idea that you have these things called electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium, etc., that are in your body that help you send electrical signals. They create a little bit of static electricity in the body for you to be able to transfer signals from your brain to your muscle to tell it to contract, right? And if you use them up and sweat them out, and so you don't keep enough electrolytes in, or if you get really dehydrated and so the concentration of electrolytes in your body becomes really concentrated, either one of those phenomena can cause abnormal muscle contractions to occur. And so then you can also cramp that way. So you either have an electrolyte issue or you have a, lack of a better way of saying it, lack of conditioning issue that is causing cramping. And some athletes might be one, some athletes might be the other, some athletes might be a combination of both. There's a couple of risk factors that kind of predispose people to cramping, even if they are well conditioned and they do have a full level of electrolytes before practice or a game. If they're a salty sweater, so some people just sweat more electrolytes out than others, and they need to replenish more electrolytes than others. Hot, humid days, or in, like, let's take football for an example, people wearing full pads, that just creates a more hot, humid environment. Long duration exercising, like long duration practices or gameplay times that you're just not used to, as well as poor conditioning of your athletes, or an inappropriate warm-up sequence to get them and their nervous system primed and ready to perform, all can be compounding risk factors. Now, one fancy thing that people or the public has discovered lately is things like pickle juice or little packets of mustard can help with cramps in the moment. And we actually kind of think we understand why that is, but also understand that it's kind of limited in context. So pickle juice and or mustard contain spicy and acidic compounds that, when ingested, stimulate receptors within your mouth and throat, esophagus, etc., called TRP channels, or transient receptor potential channels, especially these channels, which you don't have to remember, called TRPV1 and TRPA1. But these channels work as like a reset button. So by you ingesting a spicy or acidic compound, you stimulate these channels and it presses reset on the GameCube of your nervous system, and all those motor units, remember those muscle spindles and Golgi tendons that were in charge of regulating your muscle tension, they all of a sudden say, oh, what was all that about? It sends this quick jolt of shock through the system, and then the nervous system kind of says, hey, wait, let's recalibrate. The reason we understand that pickle juice and mustard aren't acting on the electrolyte and fluid imbalance theory is the fact that a lot of the time someone will take pickle juice and within 60 to 90 seconds they feel better, like their cramps have severely subsided. Well, if you took electrolytes, like because you had a genuine electrolyte issue, that wouldn't work in 60 to 90 seconds. You ingesting electrolytes takes longer than 60 to 90 seconds to actually start affecting your level and intensity of cramping. And so this TRP channel that mustard utilizes can help instantly, relatively instantly, reduce cramps. The problem is it didn't fix the actual issue, and so the person who, let's say, cramps in the third quarter, takes some pickle juice during the break between the third and fourth quarter, their cramps feel a lot better. The reality is if they go back out on the field, they're just going to re-cramp. All it did was help with the immediate discomfort of the cramp. It's not actually altering the mechanism with which the cramp occurred in the first place. Same thing with stretching. You see a coach on the sideline stretching a kid's calf after that calf cramped. Holding that stretch will get the cramp to subside, but if that athlete goes back out on the field, he's just going to cramp again. So the hard truth is, if you didn't condition enough, if you didn't fuel enough, if you didn't train it at the intensity you're trying to perform at, and you start cramping, the rest of that game's kind of lost. Your performance is going to subside, and you're not going to be able to get back out on the field realistically without re-cramping. Use that as a wake-up call to be like, hey, wait, I do condition well. Okay, well, maybe you're a salty sweater and you just need to refuel with electrolytes. Or maybe be like, I actually didn't condition at all. Or when I practice, I always hold back 20, 30%. So my body's not used to those like aggressive sprints that you do in a game when someone's genuinely chasing you. Maybe you need to actually sprint with that intensity ever so often so it's not so novel for your nervous system.